The mahogany banister gleamed under Janice Casa's cloth, but she polished it one more time anyway. 6 months into this job, and she still couldn't shake the feeling that one wrong move would send her back to the streets of Newark with nothing. The Bellucci estate in Bergen County was unlike anywhere she had ever worked. Vaulted ceilings, Italian marble imported from Tuscany, sculptures that probably cost more than her mother's entire medical bills. Every surface gleamed. Every corner held something expensive and forbidden. She stood on the third-floor landing, cloth in one hand, furniture polish in the other, looking down at the grand foyer below. Winter darkness pressed against the windows even though it was barely 8 p.m. The estate stretched out in all directions, 22 rooms, 12 staff members, security cameras on every wall. Janice had been hired through a specialized agency after passing a background check more thorough than anything she'd experienced before. They asked about her childhood, her foster placements, her criminal record, non-existent, her debts, substantial. They asked why she needed the job so badly. She told them the truth. Her mother's cancer treatments were bleeding them dry. Her sister needed tuition money. They nodded and handed her a contract with a salary that made her hands shake. The head of household, Mrs. Gallo, had been very clear during orientation. Keep your head down. Do your work. Never ask questions about Mr. Bellucci's business. Never speak to his associates. Never make eye contact with the boss unless directly addressed. Above all, remain invisible. Janice had followed those rules perfectly. She had seen Lloyd Bellucci perhaps 10 times in 6 months. Each encounter lasted less than a minute. He moved through the estate like a storm system. Dark, focused, surrounded by men in expensive suits who spoke in Italian and carried themselves like soldiers. His lieutenants, Romano and Carlo, flanked him constantly. He never looked at her. Not once. She was furniture. A shadow. Invisible. That was fine. She preferred it that way. She squeezed the cloth over her cleaning caddy, watching furniture polish drip between her fingers. Her back ached from scrubbing floors all morning. Her knees were sore. But the work was steady, the pay was extraordinary, and she could finally afford her mother's next round of chemotherapy. Her sister Emma's spring tuition was paid. For the first time in her 28 years, Janice could breathe without counting pennies. A sound caught her attention. Downstairs, the front door opened and closed. Male voices drifted up. Lloyd Bellucci and his men, returning from whatever business kept them out until all hours. Janice froze, cloth suspended mid-polish. The voices moved toward the study. A door closed. Silence returned. She released her breath and resumed polishing, her reflection ghosting across the dark wood. The house settled around her, all that expensive silence that came with old money and dangerous men. Then she smelled it. Smoke. Not cigarette smoke. Not fireplace smoke. Something acrid. Chemical. Wrong. Janice's head snapped up. She scanned the hallway, nostrils flaring. There, barely visible in the low lighting. A thin gray tendril curling from beneath a door at the far end of the corridor. The east wing, where Dario's rooms were. Her stomach dropped. She set down the polish and moved toward the door, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. The smoke thickened as she approached. She pressed her palm against the door and jerked it back. The wood was hot. "Fire," she whispered. Then louder, "Fire." Her voice echoed through the empty corridor. Where was everyone? Where were the staff? Where was Dario's nanny? Then she remembered. It was Sunday night. Most staff had the evening off. The nanny visited her family on Sundays. Dario would be alone in his rooms, doing homework or playing with his toys, completely unaware. Janice grabbed the door handle and threw it open. Heat slammed into her like a physical force. The hallway beyond was engulfed, flames climbing the walls, consuming the antique wallpaper, licking at the ceiling. Black smoke rolled toward her in waves, stinging her eyes, burning her throat. And somewhere in that inferno was a 7-year-old boy. Dario, she screamed into the flames. No response. Just the roar of fire and the crack of burning wood. Every rational thought told her to run. To find help. To sound the alarm. To let the professionals handle it. She was a maid. She had no training for this. She had no business running into a burning building. But she thought of Dario. Quiet, sad-eyed Dario who had lost his mother 3 years ago and still cried in the garden when he thought no one was watching. Dario who had asked her once, in that small voice of his, if she knew any lullabies because he couldn't remember his mother's anymore. Janice didn't think. She ran toward the fire. She grabbed a decorative throw from a nearby chair, pressed it against her face, and plunged into the smoke. The heat was unbearable. Her eyes streamed tears. She couldn't see 3 feet ahead. But she knew the layout. She'd cleaned these rooms 100 times. Dario's bedroom was straight ahead, 20 feet. His playroom was attached, 15 feet beyond that. She stumbled through the flames, one arm raised to shield her face, the other reaching out blindly. The wallpaper peeled away in burning strips. Ceiling tiles began to fall, raining embers on her shoulders. She could hear beams creaking overhead, structural damage, the house beginning to fail. Dario. Her voice was raw, barely audible over the roar. She reached his bedroom door and shoved it open. More flames, more smoke. The curtains were fully engulfed. The bed was on fire. But no Dario. The playroom. He'd be in the playroom. Janice pushed forward, lungs screaming for air, vision narrowing to a pinpoint. She found the connecting door and threw herself against it. The playroom was worse. Flames had consumed the bookshelf near the door, and the entire structure had collapsed inward, blocking half the room. Through the smoke and heat haze, she saw him. Dario was slumped against the far wall beneath the window, unconscious, his small body curled into a protective ball. Soot covered his face. He wasn't moving. No. Janice scrambled over the burning debris, feeling wood splinter beneath her feet, feeling heat blister her hands. She reached the boy and dropped to her knees, pressing her fingers against his neck. Pulse. Faint, but there. She gathered him into her arms, his weight impossibly light, and turned back toward the door. The bookshelf blocked the way. The flames had spread, cutting off her entrance route. The ceiling creaked ominously above them. Another minute, and the whole room would come down. One option left. The window. Janice staggered to the wall. Dario clutched against her chest. The window was old, the kind that didn't open, just decorative leaded glass. She looked down. 2 stories to the lawn below. No choice. She grabbed a wooden toy chest, swung it with all her strength, and shattered the window. Glass exploded outward. Cold night air rushed in, feeding the flames, making them surge higher. The ceiling gave a final, fatal groan. Janice wrapped herself around Dario, pressed him against her body, and jumped. They fell through darkness and freezing air, the mansion's burning east wing receding above them. Then impact. Janice twisted at the last second, taking the landing on her shoulder and back, keeping Dario protected above her. Pain exploded through her body. The world went white. She lay on the frozen lawn, gasping for air, lungs burning, body screaming. Above her, flames shot from the broken window. She could hear shouting now. Security guards, staff members emerging from other parts of the estate. Sirens in the distance, growing closer. Dario was still in her arms. Still not moving. Still not breathing. No, Janice choked out. She rolled him onto the grass, tilted his head back, checked his mouth for obstructions. Ash and soot. She swept it clear with her fingers and pressed her mouth to his, breathing for him. Once. Twice. 3 times. Come on, baby. Come on. Chest compressions. Counting. Breathing again. Please. Please. Dario's body convulsed. He coughed, violent and wet, expelling smoke and ash. His eyes flew open, wide and terrified, and he sucked in a ragged breath. That's it. That's it, baby. Breathe. Janice gathered him close again, rocking him, her soot-covered face pressed against his dark hair. Around them, chaos erupted, security guards with fire extinguishers, staff members screaming, the distant wail of fire trucks. But all Janice could focus on was the small, fragile heartbeat against her chest and the boy's gasping breaths. Dario. The voice cut through everything, raw, desperate, terrified in a way Janice had never heard from any man. Lloyd Bellucci burst from the front entrance, still in his dress shirt and slacks from his meeting, tie loosened, jacket abandoned. Romano and Carlo flanked him, but he left them behind, running across the lawn with the single-minded focus of a father who thought his child was dead. He dropped to his knees beside them, his hands reaching for Dario, then freezing as if afraid to touch, afraid to confirm the worst. He's alive, Janice managed, her voice destroyed by smoke. He's breathing. Lloyd's hands moved then, fast and sure, taking his son from her arms, pulling the boy against his chest with a grip that was both gentle and crushing. His face, usually so controlled, so coldly handsome, was shattered. Tears cut tracks through the soot on his cheeks. His whole body shook. Dario, can you hear me? Son, please. Papa, Dario whispered, his voice barely audible. Papa, I'm scared. I've got you. You're safe. You're safe now. Lloyd's dark eyes lifted to Janice for the first time, really seeing her for the first time in 6 months of employment. She was covered in soot and blood, her uniform burned and torn, her hair singed, her hands blistered. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. And in that moment, something fundamental shifted in Lloyd Bellucci's carefully controlled universe. He reached for her with his free hand, fingers closing around her wrist with bruising intensity. You, he said, voice raw and wrecked. You went in there. You saved him. Janice tried to nod, but the world was spinning. Shock was setting in, adrenaline crashing. She swayed. Lloyd's arm shot out, catching her before she fell, pulling her forward until both she and Dario were enclosed in his embrace. His hand came up to cup the back of her head, holding her against his shoulder. You're never leaving me, he said, the words spoken into her hair with absolute finality. Do you understand? You belong to this family now. You're mine. Paramedics arrived, pulling them apart, checking vitals, loading Dario onto a stretcher. But Lloyd's hand never left Janice's wrist, his grip iron-strong, as if letting go would cause her to disappear like smoke. Sir, we need to check her too, a paramedic began. She stays with me, Lloyd said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Both of them. They stay with me. In the ambulance, with Dario between them both and Lloyd's hand still wrapped around her wrist, Janice's eyes met those of the man who had never seen her before tonight. His gaze was fierce, possessive, and utterly transformed. What's your name? He asked. After 6 months of invisibility, after saving his son's life, this was the first personal question Lloyd Bellucci had ever asked her. "Janice," she whispered. "Janice Koss. Janice." He said it like he was committing it to memory. Like he was claiming it. "You're never leaving me, Janice. Never." And somehow, covered in ash and blood and pain, Janice knew her life had just changed forever. Stay with me as I share what unfolds. You will be shocked. Please don't forget to subscribe. It will help us grow. Thank you so much. 6 months earlier, Janice had stood in the kitchen of her cramped Newark apartment, staring at the stack of medical bills spread across the table like a death sentence. Her mother's latest round of chemotherapy had cost $12,000. Emma's spring tuition was due in 3 weeks. The diner where Janice worked paid $9 an hour plus tips that barely covered groceries. She had grown up in foster care, shuffled between 6 homes before aging out at 18. She knew what it meant to be invisible, to keep your head down, to survive by not being noticed. Those skills had served her well until her mother got sick. Until Emma earned a scholarship that covered tuition but nothing else. Until invisibility stopped being protection and became just another cage. The cleaning agency job posting had felt like divine intervention. Live-in position. Wealthy estate in Bergen County. Salary that made her breath catch. Extensive background check required. Discretion essential. She had passed the screening barely. No criminal record helped. The interviewer, a severe woman named Mrs. Gallo, had looked at her foster care history with something like pity. "You understand what discretion means, Miss Koss? Mr. Bellucci values his privacy above all else. What you see, what you hear, stays within these walls. Are we clear?" Janice had nodded. She would have agreed to anything. The Bellucci estate was a fortress disguised as a mansion. 12-foot walls surrounded the property. Security cameras tracked every angle. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter in shifts. The other staff members spoke in whispers about their employer, Lloyd Bellucci, who owned half of northern New Jersey's commercial real estate and probably controlled things that weren't discussed in polite company. Janice learned quickly: polish what's already perfect, clean what's already spotless, and never ask why 3 men in suits met in the study at 2 in the morning. Never question why Romano carried a gun in a shoulder holster, or why Carlo answered the door with his hand near his waistband. Never wonder why certain deliveries came through the service entrance under heavy guard. Stay invisible. That was the only rule that mattered. She had seen Lloyd Bellucci exactly 10 times in 6 months. Once in the hallway when she pressed herself against the wall, and he passed without acknowledgement. 3 times through doorways as he moved between rooms, always surrounded by his men. Twice in the garage as black SUVs with tinted windows pulled away for business she didn't want to understand. 4 times at a distance, watching through windows as he walked the grounds with Romano and Carlo flanking him like Secret Service agents. He was younger than she expected. Maybe 38, dark hair touched with gray at the temples, tall and broad-shouldered in suits that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Handsome in a cold, dangerous way. His face rarely showed emotion, his dark eyes missing nothing. He had never spoken to her. Never looked directly at her. She was furniture. A shadow. Exactly what she needed to be. His son was different. Dario Bellucci was 7 years old, small for his age, with his father's dark hair and eyes that held too much sadness for a child. The staff whispered about his mother, Liliana, beautiful and kind, killed 3 years ago in a car bombing meant for Lloyd. The boy had nightmares. He didn't play with other children. He moved through the mansion like a ghost, quiet and withdrawn, carrying grief that should have been too heavy for such small shoulders. Janice had interacted with him exactly twice. The first time, she'd been cleaning the library when Dario appeared in the doorway, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. He'd pointed at a toy on a high shelf, too shy to ask out loud. Janice had retrieved it without a word, handing it to him with a small smile. He'd whispered, "Thank you," so quietly she almost missed it. The second time, she'd found him crying in the garden, curled beneath a rose trellis where he thought no one could see. Janice had knelt beside him, not speaking, just sitting there until his sobs quieted. When he finally looked up, she'd offered him a tissue. "Bad days happen," she'd said softly. "It's okay to cry." He nodded, wiped his eyes, and walked back to the house without another word. After that, sometimes she'd catch him watching her from doorways. Not speaking. Just watching with those sad, knowing eyes. Janice understood him in a way she couldn't explain. She knew what it meant to lose everything, to feel alone in rooms full of people, to carry weight that nobody else could see. She knew what it meant to be invisible by necessity rather than choice. She never imagined that understanding would save his life. The fire started at 2:17 a.m. on a Sunday in February. Janice would remember the time forever, burned into her memory alongside the smell of smoke and the sound of breaking glass. Later, investigators would determine it was arson. Accelerant in 3 locations, professional job, meant to kill. The Calabrese family's opening move in a war Lloyd Bellucci hadn't seen coming. But in that moment, standing on the 3rd floor with smoke curling under a door, all Janice knew was that a child was dying and she was the only one who could reach him. She had run into the fire without thinking, without permission, without considering the consequences. Her body had moved on instinct. The same instinct that had kept her alive through foster care, through poverty, through every impossible situation life had thrown at her. Save the child. Nothing else mattered. The heat had been unbearable, the smoke blinding, the fear paralyzing. But she'd found him. She'd pulled him from the flames. She'd jumped 2 stories with his unconscious body clutched against her chest. She'd breathed life back into his lungs while the mansion burned behind them. And when Lloyd Bellucci had dropped to his knees on the frozen lawn, tears cutting tracks through soot on his face, pulling both her and his son into his arms with a grip that bordered on desperate, when he'd said, "You're never leaving me," with absolute finality, Janice had felt something shift in the foundation of her carefully invisible existence. In the ambulance, with Dario's small hand in hers and Lloyd's fingers wrapped around her wrist like he was afraid she'd disappear, Janice had looked into the eyes of a man she'd spent 6 months avoiding. He saw her now. Really saw her. And there was no going back to invisible. The paramedics treated them both for smoke inhalation and second-degree burns. Lloyd refused to leave her side, even when doctors tried to separate them for examination. His hand remained locked around her wrist, his voice brooking no argument. "She stays with me. Both of them stay with me." As dawn broke over the hospital, with Dario sleeping peacefully in the next room and Lloyd Bellucci still holding her hand like a lifeline, Janice Koss realized her life had just transformed in ways she couldn't begin to understand. She had saved a child. And in doing so, she had bound herself to a dangerous man's world in ways that couldn't be undone. The invisible woman had been seen. And nothing would ever be the same. Janice woke to find Lloyd Bellucci sitting beside her hospital bed like a sentinel, still wearing yesterday's dress shirt, now wrinkled and stained with soot. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw dark with stubble, but his gaze was alert and fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Dario?" The words scraped from her damaged throat. Stable. Next room. The doctors say he'll make a full recovery. Lloyd's voice was rough with exhaustion and something deeper. Because of you. Janice tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through her burned hands and bruised ribs. Lloyd was on his feet instantly, adjusting her pillows with surprising gentleness for such dangerous hands. I need to see him. You will. But first, we talk. Lloyd pulled his chair closer, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. You're not going back to the staff quarters. You're not going back to cleaning floors or polishing banisters. That ends today. Mr. Bellucci, I appreciate. Lloyd. You've earned the right to use my name. His dark eyes held hers. You're Dario's primary guardian now. You'll live in the family wing in the suite next to his room. Your salary is being increased to $200,000 a year, plus benefits, plus housing. The number hit her like a physical blow. I can't. I'm just a maid. Lloyd's expression transformed into something cold and dangerous. Don't ever say that again. His voice dropped to a lethal quiet. You ran into a burning building for my son. You pulled him from the flames. You jumped 2 stories with his body in your arms. You breathed life back into his lungs while my home burned around you. He leaned closer, his face inches from hers. You're not just anything. You're the woman who gave him back to me. That makes you invaluable. That makes you mine. The possessiveness in that final word should have frightened her. Instead, it settled something deep in her chest. A belonging she'd never experienced before. I have a sister, Janice said, finding her voice. Emma. She's in college. And my mother, she's sick, in a care facility in Newark. I need to visit them. Sundays, at minimum. Done. You'll have Sundays off and a car at your disposal whenever you need it. Lloyd didn't hesitate. What else? She couldn't think of anything else. Her mind was still reeling. Then it settled. Lloyd stood, pulling a phone from his pocket. Mrs. Gallo is moving your belongings as we speak. When you're discharged tomorrow, you'll go directly to your new room. By the time Janice was released the next afternoon, her entire life had been reorganized. The small corner room in the staff quarters, with its narrow bed and shared bathroom, had been replaced by a suite larger than her entire Newark apartment. Cream-colored walls, a king-sized bed with expensive linens, an attached bathroom with heated floors, and windows overlooking the gardens. Her meager belongings looked lost in the vast closet. Mrs. Gallo briefed her with professional efficiency. Master Dario has therapy appointments twice weekly. He takes medication for anxiety at bedtime. He has nightmares. They've worsened since the fire. His schedule is here. She handed Janice a leather-bound planner. Mr. Bellucci expects you to accompany Dario to all appointments and activities. You have full authority over his care. The other staff members watched Janice's transformation with mixed reactions. The cook, Maria, offered a warm smile and a whispered, "You deserve this." But she caught the housekeepers whispering in corners, their eyes tracking her with resentment. The girl who had scrubbed floors beside them last week now lived in the family wing. Janice ignored the jealousy. She had survived worse than workplace politics. When she finally entered Dario's room that evening, the boy was sitting up in bed, small and fragile against white pillows. His eyes, those sad, knowing eyes, found hers immediately. Miss Janice. His voice was barely a whisper. Hey, sweetheart. She crossed to him, sitting carefully on the edge of his bed. How are you feeling? Dario stared at her for a long moment, his lower lip trembling. Then tears spilled down his cheeks. You saved me. You came back for me. Of course I did. Janice's throat tightened. I wasn't going to leave you there. Everyone leaves." The words were so quiet, so broken. Mama left. Everyone leaves. Janice pulled him into her arms, mindful of his foreline, feeling his small body shake with sobs. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise." She held him until the crying subsided, until his breathing evened out against her shoulder. When she started to pull away, his hand clutched at her shirt. "Can you stay?" "Just until I fall asleep." "I'll stay as long as you need." She read to him from a book on his nightstand, something about dragons and knights, her smoke-damaged voice stumbling over words until exhaustion finally claimed him. When she looked up, Lloyd was standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression she couldn't name. He didn't speak, just nodded once, slowly, as if confirming something to himself. That night, lying in her new bed in her impossible new room, Janice stared at the ceiling and realized there was no going back. She had crossed a line the moment she ran into those flames. Lloyd Bellucci had claimed her with the same absolute certainty he probably claimed everything in his dangerous world. And somehow, impossibly, she didn't want to run. The first morning in her new role, Janice woke Dario at 7 a.m., helping him dress for school with gentle efficiency. He was quiet, hesitant, watching her with those cautious eyes as if waiting for her to disappear. She made him breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, and sat with him while he ate, answering his careful questions about whether she'd really be there when he got home. "I'll be right here," she promised. Every day. Something in his small face relaxed, just slightly. The routines came naturally, as if she'd been doing this for years instead of days. Homework at the kitchen table, her patient voice explaining math problems. Dinner in the family dining room, Dario chattering about his day while Lloyd watched from the head of the table with that unreadable expression. Bedtime stories, her smoke-roughened voice weaving tales of adventure until Dario's eyes grew heavy. The nightmares started the third night. Janice woke to Dario's screams, her feet hitting the floor before conscious thought caught up. She found him tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, fighting invisible flames, calling for his mother. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe." "I'm here." She gathered him close, rocking him, feeling his small body shake with terror. When words weren't enough, she started humming a lullaby her third foster mother had sung, the only good memory from those years. Her voice found the melody, soft and steady, and slowly Dario's sobs quieted. She stayed until dawn, keeping watch while he slept fitfully against her shoulder. It became their ritual. Every nightmare, and there were many, ended with Janice in his room, singing lullabies she'd thought she'd forgotten, maternal instincts she'd never known she possessed flowing like water from a cracked dam. Lloyd appeared in doorways, silent and observing. At breakfast, his dark eyes would track her movements as she helped Dario with his cereal. At dinner, he'd watch her coax the boy into eating vegetables. At bedtime, he'd stand in the hallway while she read stories, his expression shifting through grief and gratitude into something deeper, something almost hungry. But he never spoke, never interrupted, just watched, as if memorizing every moment. The mansion transformed around her. Romano nodded respectfully when their paths crossed, once even offering, "The kid's lucky to have you." Carlos smiled when she asked about his daughter's soccer game. Mrs. Gallo began seeking her opinion on household matters. "What does Master Dario prefer for lunch? Should we adjust his schedule?" Janice wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, acknowledged, essential. "Before we continue, can you tell us where you are watching from? We would like to know a little about you, our wonderful audience. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video. That's all we ask from you. Thank you." Sundays, she drove to Newark in the BMW Lloyd had provided, a car worth more than every vehicle she'd ever owned combined. Her sister Emma met her at their mother's care facility, skepticism written across her face. "This is insane, January." Emma kept her voice low as they walked through sterile hallways. "You're living with a mob boss, taking care of his kid, driving his car. This sounds like a Mafia movie." "It's not like that, isn't it?" Emma stopped walking, turning to face her. "Are you safe? Really safe?" Janice thought about Lloyd's possessive grip on her wrist in the ambulance, about Romano's gun and Carlo's watchful eyes, about conversations in Italian that stopped when she entered rooms, about the armed guards and security cameras and the dangerous world she'd stepped into without permission. "I don't know," she admitted. "But Dario needs me. And I need." She trailed off, unable to explain the belonging she felt in that fortress of a mansion. Their mother was sleeping, thin and fragile, against white pillows. The medical bills that had haunted Janice for years were paid in full. Lloyd had taken care of it without asking, the same way he took care of everything. When Janice returned to the estate that evening, Dario was waiting by the front door, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Miss Jan, you came back." He launched himself at her, small arms wrapping around her waist. "Of course I came back. I promised, didn't I?" He'd started calling her Miss Jan the second week, the shortened name slipping out naturally and sticking. It felt right, intimate but respectful, familial but not presumptuous. Safety came in many forms, Janice realized. Maybe it wasn't about armed guards or fortress walls. Maybe it was about a 7-year-old's trust and a promise kept. Small moments began connecting her to Lloyd in ways that felt inevitable. Passing in hallways, his hand would brush her lower back, proprietary, protective. Shared meals where his eyes met hers across the table, holding conversations without words. Late nights in the kitchen when she came down for water and found him there, tie loosened, exhaustion bleeding through his controlled facade. "Can't sleep?" he'd ask. "Dario had another nightmare. You're good with him. Better than anyone's been since." He'd trail off, grief shadowing his features. They'd stand in comfortable silence, sharing space, building something neither would name. The breakthrough came at dinner 4 weeks in. Dario was telling a story about school, gesturing wildly, and Janice made a joke about his math teacher's mustache looking like a caterpillar. Dario burst into genuine laughter, bright and unrestrained, the sound of a child remembering how to be joyful. Janice looked up to find Lloyd staring at his son with wonder, and then his eyes met hers. For the first time since she'd known him, Lloyd Bellucci smiled. Really smiled. And something warm unfurled in Janice's chest, dangerous and undeniable. Everything was changing, and she was helpless to stop it. The first morning in her new role, Janice woke Dario at 7 a.m., helping him dress for school with gentle efficiency. He was quiet, hesitant, watching her with those cautious eyes as if waiting for her to disappear. She made him breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, and sat with him while he ate, answering his careful questions about whether she'd really be there when he got home. "I'll be right here," she promised. Every day. Something in his small face relaxed, just slightly. The routines came naturally, as if she'd been doing this for years instead of days. Homework at the kitchen table, her patient voice explaining math problems. Dinner in the family dining room, Dario chattering about his day, while Lloyd watched from the head of the table with that unreadable expression. Bedtime stories, her smoke-roughened voice weaving tales of adventure until Dario's eyes grew heavy. The nightmares started the third night. Janice woke to Dario's screams, her feet hitting the floor before conscious thought caught up. She found him tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, fighting invisible flames, calling for his mother. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe." "I'm here." She gathered him close, rocking him, feeling his small body shake with terror. When words weren't enough, she started humming a lullaby her third foster mother had sung, the only good memory from those years. Her voice found the melody, soft and steady, and slowly Dario's sobs quieted. She stayed until dawn, keeping watch while he slept fitfully against her shoulder. It became their ritual. Every nightmare, and there were many, ended with Janice in his room, singing lullabies she'd thought she'd forgotten, maternal instincts she'd never known she possessed flowing like water from a cracked dam. Lloyd appeared in doorways, silent and observing. At breakfast, his dark eyes would track her movements as she helped Dario with his cereal. At dinner, he'd watch her coax the boy into eating vegetables. At bedtime, he'd stand in the hallway while she read stories, his expression shifting through grief and gratitude into something deeper, something almost hungry. But he never spoke, never interrupted, just watched, as if memorizing every moment. The mansion transformed around her. Romano nodded respectfully when their paths crossed, once even offering, "The kid's lucky to have you." Carlos smiled when she asked about his daughter's soccer game. Mrs. Gallo began seeking her opinion on household matters. "What does Master Dario prefer for lunch? Should we adjust his schedule?" Janice wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, acknowledged, essential. Sundays, she drove to Newark in the BMW Lloyd had provided, a car worth more than every vehicle she'd ever owned combined. Her sister Emma met her at their mother's care facility, skepticism written across her face. "This is insane, Jan." Emma kept her voice low as they walked through sterile hallways. "You're living with a mob boss, taking care of his kid, driving his car. This sounds like a Mafia movie." "It's not like that, isn't it?" Emma stopped walking, turning to face her. "Are you safe? Really safe?" Janice thought about Lloyd's possessive grip on her wrist in the ambulance, about Romano's gun and Carlo's watchful eyes, about conversations in Italian that stopped when she entered rooms, about the armed guards and security cameras and the dangerous world she'd stepped into without permission. "I don't know," she admitted. "But Dario needs me. And I need." She trailed off, unable to explain the belonging she felt in that fortress of a mansion. Their mother was sleeping, thin and fragile, against white pillows. The medical bills that had haunted Janice for years were paid in full. Lloyd had taken care of it without asking, the same way he took care of everything. When Janice returned to the estate that evening, Dario was waiting by the front door, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Miss Jan, you came back." He launched himself at her, small arms wrapping around her waist. "Of course I came back. I promised, didn't I?" He'd started calling her Miss Jan the second week, the shortened name slipping out naturally and sticking. It felt right, intimate but respectful, familial but not presumptuous. Safety came in many forms, Janice realized. Maybe it wasn't about armed guards or fortress walls. Maybe it was about a 7-year-old's trust and a promise kept. Small moments began connecting her to Lloyd in ways that felt inevitable. Passing in hallways, his hand would brush her lower back, proprietary, protective. Shared meals where his eyes met hers across the table, holding conversations without words. Late nights in the kitchen when she came down for water and found him there, tie loosened, exhaustion bleeding through his controlled facade. "Can't sleep?" he'd ask. "Dario had another nightmare. You're good with him. Better than anyone's been since." He'd trail off, grief shadowing his features. They'd stand in comfortable silence, sharing space, building something neither would name. The breakthrough came at dinner 4 weeks in. Dario was telling a story about school, gesturing wildly, and Janice made a joke about his math teacher's mustache looking like a caterpillar. Dario burst into genuine laughter, bright and unrestrained, the sound of a child remembering how to be joyful. Janice looked up to find Lloyd staring at his son with wonder, and then his eyes met hers. For the first time since she'd known him, Lloyd Bellucci smiled. Really smiled. And something warm unfurled in Janice's chest, dangerous and undeniable. Everything was changing, and she was helpless to stop it. Hello there. Thank you for watching up to this point. I hope you are enjoying this story. We would like to read your opinion in the comments section. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That's your own way to help us grow. Thank you. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. Security doubled overnight, new guards patrolling the perimeter, cameras installed in corners Janice hadn't known existed. Romano and Carlo moved through the mansion with heightened tension, hands near waistbands, eyes constantly scanning. Conversations happened in rapid Italian, stopping abruptly when she entered rooms. Men arrived at odd hours, expensive cars pulling through the gates after midnight. Lloyd's study became command central, lights burning until dawn, voices raised in argument behind closed doors. Dario felt it too. "Why are there more guards, Miss Jan?" he asked one morning, clutching his backpack. "Your papa just wants to make sure we're extra safe," Janice said, keeping her voice steady. But her own unease was growing. Something was coming. She could feel it in the air like electricity before a storm. The summons came on a Thursday evening. Mrs. Gallo appeared in the doorway while Janice was helping Dario with homework. "Mr. Bellucci requests your presence in his office." Immediately, Janice's stomach dropped. She squeezed Dario's shoulder. "Keep working on those fractions. I'll be right back." Lloyd's office was different than she remembered, maps spread across his desk, surveillance photos pinned to a board, the air thick with tension. Romano and Carlo stood by the windows, their usual deference replaced by something harder. A third man, older, official-looking, held a tablet displaying images Janice couldn't quite see. Lloyd stood when she entered, gesturing to a chair. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Janice sat, folding her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. "This is Fire Marshal Davidson," Lloyd said without preamble. "He's completed his investigation." He nodded at the marshal, who turned the tablet toward Janice. Photos filled the screen. Burn patterns. Chemical analysis. Accelerant spread diagrams. "The fire was arson," Lloyd said, his voice flat and cold. "Accelerant in 3 locations: Dario's playroom, the hallway outside, and the main stairwell. Professional job. Meant to trap him inside. Meant to kill." The words hit like physical blows. Janice's vision narrowed. "Who?" "The Calabrese family." Lloyd's jaw clenched. "Vincent Calabrese controls most of Philadelphia's operations. He's been trying to move into northern New Jersey for 2 years. We've blocked him at every turn." He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "He thought killing my son would break me, make me vulnerable, create an opening he could exploit. He tried to murder a child," Janice whispered, horror coating her tongue. "Targeting a child is a declaration of total war." Lloyd's voice dropped to something lethal. "He made a mistake. And he's going to pay for it." Romano spoke from the window, his accent thick. "They've made 3 more moves since the fire. Testing our response. Seeing if the boss is distracted by grief." "They were wrong," Carlo added darkly. Lloyd's eyes found Janice's. "I'm telling you this because you're part of this now. You became part of my world the moment you saved my son. The Calabrese family knows who you are. They know what you did. That makes you a target. Her blood ran cold. A target. Which is why security has increased. Lloyd straightened, moving closer. Armed guards at every entrance. Motion sensors on the perimeter. Cameras covering every angle. And you, he pointed at her, don't leave this property without a security detail. No exceptions. You're assigning me a bodyguard? The surreality of it almost made her laugh. Marco will accompany you on your Sunday visits. Romano will brief you on emergency protocols. If anything feels wrong, you get Dario to the safe room and you call me. Understood. Janice nodded numbly. Why are you telling me this? She asked. You could have just increased security without explaining. Lloyd crouched in front of her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. Because you need to know what you walked into when you saved my son. Because you deserve the truth. His dark eyes held hers with intensity that made her breath catch. And because I won't lie to you. Not anymore. Most people would run, Romano observed from the window. Hearing what you just heard. She's not most people, Lloyd said without breaking eye contact. She's braver than most of the men I work with. Something shifted in the room. Acknowledgement, respect, acceptance. I'm scared, Janice admitted quietly. Good. Fear keeps you alert. Lloyd's hand came up, hovering near her face, then settling gently against her cheek. His thumb traced the small scar the fire had left near her temple, a permanent reminder of the night everything changed. But I won't let them hurt you. I won't let them hurt either of you. The touch was electric, intimate, crossing lines neither had acknowledged existed. Janice's heart hammered against her ribs. Everyone I love ends up dead, Lloyd said, voice barely above a whisper. My wife. My parents. People who get close to me don't survive. But I can't, his jaw worked. I can't let that happen to you. Lloyd. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Lloyd's hand dropped, his expression closing off as he stood. Come in. Mrs. Gallo appeared. Master Dario is asking for Miss Janice. He's worried. Reality crashed back. Janice stood quickly, Lloyd's heat still burning on her skin where he'd touched her. Go, Lloyd said, his voice returning to its usual command. We'll discuss security details tomorrow. Janice fled, her mind spinning, her cheek still tingling from his touch. Everything had just gotten more dangerous. And not just because of the Calabrese family. The intelligence came through Romano's network at 3 a.m., intercepted communications, movement patterns, surveillance suggesting the Calabrese family was planning something bigger. Lloyd made the decision without hesitation. We leave in 2 hours. Pack essentials only. Janice woke Dario gently, helping him dress while explaining they were going on an adventure to the mountains. His eyes widened with excitement rather than fear at 7 years old. He couldn't fully grasp the danger, only the novelty of a spontaneous trip. Like camping, he asked, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Exactly like camping, Janice said, praying it would stay that simple. The convoy left at dawn. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, Romano and Carlo in the lead vehicle, Lloyd driving the second with Janice and Dario, additional security bringing up the rear. They drove for 3 hours into the Pocono Mountains, civilization falling away until only dense forest remained. Have you experienced something traumatic before? Have you had to run away from somewhere? Hide from someone? Tell us about it. Let's know how you did it and maybe a bit of what happened. We would love to hear your story. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That's your own way to help us grow. Thank you. The safe house emerged from the trees like something from a fairy tale, a sprawling lodge of dark wood and stone, windows reflecting sky, wraparound porches built for summer evenings. But the fairy tale had teeth, Security cameras on every corner, motion sensors hidden in the forest, 6 armed guards already patrolling the perimeter. Inside, the lodge was warm and surprisingly comfortable. Nothing like the mansion's cold elegance. This place felt lived in, human, designed for actual life rather than display. "It's beautiful," Janice breathed. "It was supposed to be a family retreat," Lloyd said quietly. "Liliana and I plan to bring Dario here every summer. We came once, right before she died." For the first time since the fire, Lloyd was fully present. No lieutenants hovering nearby. No urgent phone calls pulling him away. Just a father with his son and the woman who had become essential to them both. They cooked meals together, Lloyd surprisingly competent in the kitchen, teaching Dario to crack eggs while Janice made pancakes, the 3 of them laughing when flour ended up in Lloyd's dark hair. They played board games by the fireplace. Lloyd taught Dario chess, his patience infinite as he explained strategy to a 7-year-old who just wanted to make the knight's jump. "You're good with him," Janice observed one afternoon, watching Lloyd guide Dario's small hand across the chessboard. "I haven't been. Not since Liliana died." Lloyd's jaw tightened. "But you made me remember how." They hiked through the forest, Dario between them, his small hands clutching theirs. He chattered about birds and trees and whether bears really lived in the woods. When he got tired, Lloyd lifted him onto his shoulders, and Janice's heart ached at the picture they made. Father and son, backlit by afternoon sun filtering through leaves, looking like any normal family on vacation. Hello there. Thank you for watching up to this point. I hope you are enjoying this story. We would like to read your opinion in the comments section. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That's your own way to help us grow. Thank you. That evening, after Dario fell asleep, Lloyd surprised her by pulling out an acoustic guitar from a closet. His fingers found the strings with rusty muscle memory, coaxing out a melody that was equal parts melancholy and beautiful. "I didn't know you played," Janice said softly. "I don't. Not anymore. Haven't touched this since before my father died and the business became mine." He played a few more notes, then stopped. "Liliana used to ask me to play for her. Said it was the only time I looked peaceful." They sat by the fireplace, the lodge quiet around them, the outside world temporarily held at bay. Lloyd stared into the flames, his expression distant. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" he asked. "Anything." Dario was supposed to be in the car that day. The day Liliana died. Lloyd's voice was flat, controlled, holding back an ocean of pain. She was going to the grocery store. Dario wanted to go with her, he always did. But that morning, he threw a tantrum about something stupid. His shoes, I think. He refused to leave. "I told Liliana to go ahead, that I'd deal with him." Janice's stomach dropped. That tantrum saved his life. If he'd gone with her, if I'd forced him into that car. Lloyd's hands clenched. "The bomb was meant for me. The Calabrese family, different branch, same poison, planted it under the driver's seat. They knew my car. They didn't know Liliana would borrow it that day." Lloyd. "Dario doesn't know. He thinks his mother died in a random accident. He doesn't know he was the target. That his mother died because she was in a car meant for me." Lloyd finally looked at her, his eyes hollow. "I've lost everyone I've loved. My parents. My wife. Everyone who gets close to me ends up dead. And I can't," his voice cracked. "I can't survive losing you too. Either of you." Janice moved to him, taking his face in her hands the way she'd seen him do to Dario. "You're not going to lose us. We're right here. We're staying. You don't understand what my world costs. I shot a man to protect your son. I think I understand exactly what your world costs." She held his gaze. "And I'm still here. I'm still choosing this. Something broke in Lloyd's carefully maintained control. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. You make me believe in second chances. In the possibility that maybe I don't destroy everything I touch. You make me believe I deserve to be chosen, Janice whispered. That I'm worth more than invisibility. Lloyd kissed her then, soft at first, questioning, then deeper as she responded. It wasn't the desperate kiss of passion, but something more profound. Recognition, acceptance, the sealing of a bond that had been forming since that first night on the burning lawn. When they finally pulled apart, Lloyd's thumb traced her cheekbone. I love you. I don't know when it happened, but I do. Completely. I love you too, Janice breathed, the truth of it settling into her bones. They sat wrapped in each other until the fire burned low, talking about futures they hadn't dared imagine, making promises in the darkness. But outside, in the forest, something was moving. And the peace they'd found was about to shatter. Comment below if you've ever had a perfect moment right before everything went wrong. We see you. We feel that. I'll write the remaining chapters, 6 to 9. Following your outline, maintaining the narrative tone and including emotional CTAs. Here they are. On the 5th morning at the lodge, Lloyd's phone rang before dawn. Janice heard his low voice through the bedroom wall, Italian phrases clipped and urgent. When he emerged, his expression was tight. I need to go back to Bergen County. Emergency meeting with Matteo. Something's happened with our Philadelphia contacts. Janice's stomach nodded. How long? For hours. Maybe 5. Lloyd pulled on his jacket, his movements sharp with reluctance. He called Romano and Carlo, issuing orders in rapid Italian, then turned back to her. 6 guards stay here. Marco's in charge. If anything feels wrong, you take Dario to the panic room. It's behind the master closet. Reinforced steel, separate phone line, supplies for 72 hours. He showed her the hidden release, made her practice opening it twice. Then he retrieved a Glock 19 from the nightstand drawer, checked the magazine, and set it on the dresser. Safety's here. Point and squeeze, don't pull. Center mass. Keep firing until the threat stops. Drop a comment if you've ever had to learn something you prayed you'd never need to use. Janice stared at the weapon, her mouth dry. Lloyd, I need to know you can protect him if I'm not here. His hands cupped her face. Can you do that? She thought of Dario sleeping down the hall, of the men who'd tried to burn him alive. Yes, that's my girl. He kissed her hard, possessive, desperate. Then he was gone, the convoy pulling away into morning mist. The next 3 hours passed normally. Janice made breakfast, Dario's favorite blueberry pancakes, and they ate at the kitchen table, syrup dripping, his chatter filling the comfortable space. She helped him build a Lego fortress, her mind only half present, ears tracking sounds outside. Then she heard it. Pop, pop, pop. Distant. Too sharp for fireworks. Marco's boots pounded up the stairs. He burst through the door, face grin, weapon drawn. 2 guards down. Breach at north perimeter. Get the boy to the panic room now. Everything slowed and sped up simultaneously. Janice grabbed Dario mid-sentence, his Lego tower scattering. We're playing hide and seek with Papa's friends, baby. Special hiding spot, remember. She ran, Dario clutched against her hip, her heart threatening to explode. The master bedroom, the closet, her hands finding the release. The steel door swung open, revealing a small reinforced room with supplies, blankets, a landline phone. Inside, sweetheart. Right now. She set him down, kneeling to his eye level. Don't make a sound. If anyone comes who isn't me or your father, you use that phone and call 911. Say your name and that you need help. Can you do that? Dario's eyes were huge, terrified. Miss Jan. I'll be right outside. I promise. She kissed his forehead, tasting salt and fear. I love you, baby. Share this if you'd do anything to protect the kids you love. She sealed the door. The locks engaged with hydraulic finality. The gun felt wrong in her hands, too heavy, too real. She'd never fired a weapon. Never wanted to. But she thought of Vincent Calabrese's soldiers downstairs, men who'd burned a child's room while he slept, and something cold settled in her chest. She positioned herself in the hallway outside the master bedroom. Waiting. Minutes stretched into eternities. Then footsteps. Heavy boots. Multiple men. Voices speaking in English with Philadelphia accents. Second floor clear? Not yet. Check the bedrooms. 3 figures in black tactical gear appeared at the stairway landing. One spotted her immediately. He grinned, predatory. There's the bitch. Boss said bring her alive. Janice raised the gun. Her hands shook so badly she could barely aim. Easy, sweetheart. Put that down before you hurt yourself. She fired. The first shot went wide, punching into drywall. The second hit his shoulder, spinning him backward. He went down screaming, clutching red. The other 2 returned fire. Janice dove behind a heavy dresser, with splintering above her head, her ears ringing from concussion. She squeezed off 2 more rounds blind, praying, sobbing. Then Marco and the remaining guards hit the landing, and the hallway became hell. Gunfire strobed, muzzle flashes illuminating smoke and chaos. Someone was screaming. Maybe her. Cordite burned her throat. A body hit the floor with a wet thud. When the shooting stopped, 1 attacker was dead, 2 wounded and zip-tied. Janice was pressed against the wall, guns still raised, her whole body shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Clear, Marco shouted. Building secure. Janice's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, the gun clattering from nerveless fingers. The helicopter arrived 20 minutes later, Lloyd leaping out before the skids touched ground. He ran into the lodge, Romano and Carlo behind him, weapon drawn, face shattered with fear. He found Janice in the hallway, covered in blood spatter that wasn't hers, staring at nothing. Janice. Janice. He dropped to his knees, hands running over her body, checking for wounds. Where are you hit? Where? Not mine, she whispered. Dario. Panic room. Lloyd was up instantly, finding the release, throwing open the steel door. Dario launched himself out, sobbing, clutching his father's neck. Lloyd held him with one arm, reaching for Janice with the other, pulling them both against his chest in a crushing embrace. You protected him, Lloyd's voice broke. You killed for him. I shot someone. Janice started shaking again, the reality crashing through adrenaline. I actually shot someone. Comment below if you've ever discovered you were stronger than you thought when someone you loved needed you. Lloyd's hand came up, cradling her head. You did what you had to do. You're a warrior. You're my warrior. Boss. Romano appeared in the doorway. The survivors are talking. Calabrese soldiers. Vincent sent them personally. Wanted the woman alive, the kid dead. Something went nuclear behind Lloyd's eyes. When he spoke, his voice was empty, airless, the sound of controlled fury. Call Matteo. Call everyone. We end this. Tonight. Back at the Bellucci mansion, the compound had transformed into a military installation. Armed guards at every entrance, surveillance drones circling overhead, reinforced gates that could stop an armored vehicle. The elegant estate had become a fortress, and no one pretended otherwise anymore. Lloyd no longer shielded Janice from his world. She'd proven she belonged in it. That night, he brought her to the War Council. Romano, Carlo, Consigliere Matteo, and 6 capos gathered around the dining table that now held maps and surveillance photos instead of fine china. "Gentlemen, you know Janice." Lloyd's hand rested on her shoulder. "She's family now. She stays." Romano nodded with genuine respect. Matteo's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing. The others exchanged glances, respect mixed with curiosity. They discussed territories, weaknesses, Calabrese operations, money laundering fronts, gambling operations, warehouse locations. Janice listened, absorbing the language of organized crime, understanding crystallizing. "We hit them here." Romano stabbed a finger at a North Philadelphia warehouse. "Take out their product storage." "They'll expect that," Janice said quietly. Every head turned. Lloyd squeezed her shoulder. "Go on. You hit the warehouse, they lose product. But their real vulnerability is cash flow." She leaned forward, studying the map. "These 3 locations, gambling, check cashing, the restaurant, those are daily cash operations. No wire transfers, no paper trail. If those disappear simultaneously, they can't pay soldiers, can't fund operations. The organization starves from the inside." Silence. Then Romano grinned, sharp and dangerous. "She's got instincts, boss. Soldier instincts. Like if you believe women are just as strategic as any general when protecting their families." "Not just instincts," Matteo said slowly. "Strategy." "She's right." Lloyd's eyes met hers across the table, fierce pride burning there. "Then that's the plan." "Romano, coordinate the teams. I want this executed in 48 hours. Over the following days, Janice became Lloyd's unofficial counsel. She managed the household during the crisis, ensuring Dario maintained his routine despite armed guards everywhere. She coordinated communication between teams, becoming the comm center while chaos swirled outside. One night at 3 a.m., she found Lloyd in his study, staring at photos of Liliana spread across his desk. His shoulders were slumped, a glass of whiskey forgotten in his hand. "She'd want you to be happy," Janice said quietly from the doorway. Lloyd looked up, eyes hollow. "She'd want me to protect what I love. And I've never loved anyone the way I love you." Janice crossed to him, taking the glass and setting it aside, pulling him to his feet. "I'd burn the world for you and Dario. Whatever it takes." "I know." His forehead pressed to hers. "That's why I'm ending this. Permanently." The counterstrike began at midnight on a Thursday. 48 hours of coordinated violence that would later be called the Bergen County Gang War in newspapers that understood nothing. Bellucci soldiers hit 3 Calabrese warehouses, millions in heroin and cocaine disappeared. 2 gambling operations were raided, cash seized, key enforcers vanished. A money laundering front burned to the ground with all its records. Janice stayed at the mansion, the communication hub. Phone calls came in encrypted bursts. North warehouse secure. Cash counted 3.2 million. Target acquired, no witnesses. She relayed information, kept everyone coordinated, her voice steady even as her hands shook. When Lloyd returned after the final operation, dawn was breaking. He was exhausted, blood on his collar, violence still written in every line of his body. Janice met him at the door. No words needed. She just held him, blood and all, acceptance complete and unconditional. Share this if you've loved someone so completely you stopped asking where they'd been. The next morning, news broke. Vincent Calabrese was found dead in an apparent dispute with a rival faction. Ballistics matched weapons from a Philadelphia crew with whom the Calabrese family had been feuding. No evidence connected it to the Belluccis. The investigation went nowhere. That night, they had dinner as a family. Real dinner, in the dining room, just the three of them. Dario pushed pasta around his plate, then looked up. "Are the bad people gone now, Papa?" Lloyd's eyes met Janice's across the table. Then he reached over, ruffling his son's dark hair. "Yes, buddy. No one will hurt us again." 2 weeks after the war ended, Lloyd took Janice to his private office and handed her a folder. Inside, property deeds in her name, bank account information showing balances that made her dizzy, legal documents establishing her as Dario's guardian should anything happen to Lloyd, and a prenuptial agreement that protected her financially regardless of their relationship status. "I'm not asking you to marry me yet," Lloyd said carefully. "What I'm giving you is freedom. These accounts, these properties, they're yours. No strings. If you want to leave tomorrow, you can. You'll never worry about money again. Your mother's medical care is paid for life. Emma's education through graduate school. You're free." Janice stared at the documents, tears streaming. "Why?" "Because I need you to choose this. Choose us." Lloyd's voice was raw. "Not because you need the money or feel obligated. I need to know you're here because you want to be." Janice set down the folder and took his face in her hands. "I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. You're my family. Dario is my son. This is my home. I choose you. Comment, I choose love if you believe the best families are the ones we choose for ourselves." That evening, Lloyd led them both to the East Wing. Janice hadn't been back since the fire. Her breath caught. The entire wing had been rebuilt and transformed into a family library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, comfortable chairs, a play area for Dario. But what made her sob were the photos covering every wall. Janice and Dario baking, flour in their hair. Lloyd teaching Dario chess, both concentrating intensely. All three of them at the lodge, Dario on Lloyd's shoulders, Janice laughing. Candid moments from the past 2 months, captured and preserved. In the center, a professionally done portrait. The three of them, Dario between them, all touching, all smiling. A family. "Papa. Miss Jan. Look what I drew." Dario ran in, clutching a piece of paper. Another stick figure drawing, 3 people holding hands. But this time, words were scrawled above in a child's handwriting, "My forever family." Lloyd lifted his son up. "Is that what we are, buddy?" "Yes. Forever and ever." Dario wrapped his arms around Lloyd's neck, then reached for Janice. "Right, Mama Jan?" The words stopped everything. Dario had never called her that before. Mama Jan. Janice's vision blurred. She looked at Lloyd, seeing tears cutting tracks down his face. She pulled them both close, feeling their hearts beating against hers. "Right, baby," she whispered. "Forever and ever." They stood there in the rebuilt wing where the fire had started, where everything had changed, where Janice had proven love meant running toward flames instead of away. Lloyd's arms encircled them both, protective and cherishing. "You saved him that night," Lloyd said against her hair. "You saved us both." "You saved me too," Janice whispered. "Gave me a home. Gave me a family. Can we stay like this forever?" Dario asked, his voice small and hopeful. Lloyd and Janice answered together, "Forever, baby. Forever." The sun set through the rebuilt windows, casting them in golden light. 3 silhouettes merged into one, backlit and together. The invisible woman had been seen. The broken man had been healed. The grieving child had found a mother who'd chosen him. A family forged not in blood, but in fire. If this story touched your heart, Share it with someone who needs to know that broken families can become whole again. That love is a choice we make every day. That sometimes, the family we need finds us in the flames. Drop "Forever Family" in the comments if you believe in chosen love. We see you. We celebrate you. Thank you for being here. Please don't forget to subscribe.